All right. Well, I was hoping Paul would make it in time, and the only thing we see from Chris Taylor is his Michigan thing. He said something about watching football or otherwise. So I appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy, time on the weekend to kind of stop in and see this first opportunity for us to do a webinar. I'm hoping this is the first of many. I appreciate Jim. He actually invested a good amount of money to kind of put this together. But he thought, from what he told me the other day, that it was a great opportunity to kind of get the word out on the hobby. And he thought that was it was worth every penny he invested in. So Jim, much appreciated. So what I'll do is I'll share this PowerPoint that Jim and I kind of put together. We'll kind of talk through it. I'll be the moderator. I'll ask Jim questions, and then he's going to give us his wealth of knowledge on Bock related items.
So, don't build me up too much, Keith.
Don't fill you up too much?
Don't build me up too much.
Okay. No.
Keep me a low bar.
Okay. We'll do that. So let me pull up my PowerPoint here, and then let me go to share screen. And I guess what I should do first is click that slide and then slide show from the beginning. I hate this. All right. So I'm going to do share screen and click on here and share, and then click on slideshow. So Jim, so I again appreciate you taking the time out of your busy days to talk to us about Bock beer. So let's start off with the real deal. What's the story behind Bock beer? Where did Bock beer kind of get its name from?
Well, there's a half a dozen different stories about that. Bock, Germany seems to be the area of Germany where Bock beer began, and of course Bock is another German word for goat. So one of the legends is that the mayor of Bock invited the mayor of the neighboring town over to see whose beer was the best, and they both were drinking each other's beer, and whoever stood up the longest was the winner. And the other mayor got pretty tipsy. The mayor of Bock got pretty tipsy, but then a goat came out of nowhere and rammed the other mayor and knocked him off his feet. So the mayor of Bock was the winner, and they crowned the beer they were drinking from Bock beer. Who the heck knows?
That's obviously.
But the other thing that comes up a lot is that the monks couldn't eat during Lent, but they got to write the rules about what they could and couldn't do, so they drank liquid bread, which was a thick, malty, dark, heavy beer that either sustained them or got them to the point where they didn't give a care, and got them through Lent, and that was Bock beer.
So obviously that's where the whole goat thing came from, then, right?
That's where the goat thing came from, and
okay.
that's what to me makes Bock beer special, is that linkage with a goat.
Okay.
The advertising for Bock beer is the most distinctive in the hobby, I think.
And then it seemed like it was historically around the 1st of May, and then it was like the first few weeks of May. But that's no longer.
Generally from the 1st of March till about mid-April was opening day for Bock beer. So that corresponds with Lent season, Easter, all that.
But that's not so much the case anymore today, is it?
Well, if you're in Texas, it's not.
Yeah.
Shiner beer's available 24/7, 365. So I don't know. Yep. It's dark, it's sweet, it's malty. So I guess it's Bock beer.
Okay. So yeah, so this ad that I have here was actually one of the first ones I actually saw a goat in. I don't remember what city it was, but it was 1868. that actually had the goat in the advertisement. It was one of the first ones I could find where the goat was in the advertisement. So obviously in 1868, the goat was already fairly noteworthy to include in the ads that they had. So then there's this other one that I found that's, you can see the year on there. It says 1873. And I thought that it was a mistake or it was a fluke or some newspaper editor was just misspelling things. But I saw even in that time frame in the late 1800s, there was mention of buck beer. So what's the story behind buck beer there, Jim?
Your guess is as good as mine. But the one thing that I've always noticed about buck beer labels, I can't think of any that aren't from around the St. Louis area. So it could be associated with dialect of a group of Germans from a certain area of Germany that maybe they had the equivalent of a southern drawl and buck beer sounded like Bock beer to them or vice versa.
Yeah, so obviously they included the goat on there. Here's two labels, obviously, as Jim was saying, from the St. Louis area. And it seemed like Lemp was pretty notorious to use it that way. And then here's two more bottle labels as well. This, the one on the right, the brown and white one, obviously was a much later label. And I think indications are that they used it, what, up to Prohibition?
I haven't seen any buck beer labels or any ads after Prohibition.
Okay, so obviously they got smart and didn't continue to use it. But so that's the story behind buck beer.
And it could have been a marketing thing. You know, the marketing department's 2-drink minimum anyway. So it could be that maybe they were using it to differentiate their beer from other people's Bock beer.
Yeah, that could have easily been the case.
Yeah, maybe buck beer had a little more buck in it.
There you go. Yeah, so here's a couple of ads just from the late 1800s, early 1900s, just from some of the different ones that were used. Here's from a 1900 ad out of the Connecticut area. So obviously the goat became pretty notorious later on in ads as they were putting them in the late 1800s to the early 1900s. So Jim, so the next thing kind of wanted to talk about was the Merry Bocksters. So I put here the first newsletter cover page, as well as what the first t-shirt looked like for the Merry Bocksters. So it was a BCCA At-Large Chapter.
Which I happen to be wearing.
Oh, do you? Okay. Oh, there we go. And it was formed in 2002. And you, at that time, you were the Secretary Treasurer at the time, right?
Yeah, I'm Merry Bockster #2. Jerry Trowbridge, the late Jerry Trowbridge, was Merry Bockster #1. He walked it through the BCCA to get us chapter status. We had talked about doing it for a couple of years, and I think he finally caught me on micro night late, and I said, okay, let's do it.
So it was an effort to get Bock-minded collectors together and provide Bock, Breweriana Collectibles information in the Merry Bockster Gazetta newsletter, right?
Right. Yeah. At one time, we had well over 100 members in the chapter, and our newsletter ran for 10 years. And the chapter's inactive right now.
Yeah, so the chapter is no longer together. And then a lot of the stuff I did when I put stuff together is I went through all the Merry Bockster Gazettes to pull information out and then ask you some of the questions, because obviously you provided a lot of the information. But I think right now the only way you can get access to the actual Merry Bockster newsletters is through Beer Magazine Viewer, which is available up on the BCCA page. And then Randy has a page that you can go up if you just type in Beer Magazine Viewer. So BMV 3.0 is his new version. You can download all the newsletters that are loaded in there. There's a great amount of information, and all the Merry Bocksters are available through that, because they're no longer available on a web page, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And there's over 1,000 pages there. So you know, two things I would encourage anybody that's curious about Bock beer and Bock beer collecting to go and read some of the articles in there. And if you've got information that updates what was done then, because the first issue came out in 2002, the last one in 2012, I would love to hear it. You know, if you know of more examples of some of the rare Bock cans, we did a top 25 of the rarest Bock cans, and we had a 6-pack that were all one of a kinds. One of those, there's now 2 examples of known, the low pro National Bohemian Bock beer kind. You know, I would still love to know that information.
Yeah.
So I'd encourage anybody, if you've got updates to any of the articles in there, you know, let's hear it.
Yeah. So the T-shirt you got on that was designed by a West Virginia guy.
I had a friend of mine hand paint this T-shirt, and John Krupnick and I dumped a lot together in the 80s, and we called ourselves the Merry Bocksters because we were in Virginia and we dug a lot of Bock cans in Virginia.
And drank a lot of Bock, I'm sure.
Well, there was some of that. So we just called ourselves the Merry Bocksters that play. And I did an article, a column for the Rustlings for years called the Bock Page, which I don't know how many years I wrote that. And that kind of morphed into the Merry Bocksters Code set.
Yeah. So when you and I were kind of running through some of the questions and stuff like that, I asked you what your favorite breweriana piece was. Do you want to get to that later, Jim, or do you want to talk about that now?
It doesn't matter. I can right now.
Okay.
I got to move out of the way here.
Okay.
The piece is right behind me, and I hope the glare doesn't knock it out. But it's this West Virginia Special Bock cardboard die cut piece. It's a Lindbergh Hunt, and it's a real good likeness of Herkimer, who's hanging right above him.
Hey Keith, real quick, why don't you unshare so we can get Jim on full screen?
Okay. Yeah, let me do that. If I can find my mouse now. All right. There we go.
Is that better?
There we go, Jim. It still has some reflection to it, but that's fine. So that being your West Virginia piece is one of your favorite pieces, huh?
Yeah, it's a twofer.
Okay.
You know, I love West Virginia beer items and Bock beer items as well. So that one hits both targets. So
this was one of the photos that was included in one of your articles early in the Bockster editions. I believe it was from West Virginia, from the Fairmont Brewing Company.
Right.
Yeah. And then this Monarch piece, it was noted that it came from Rich Lazuza, and because there wasn't much as far as Midwest breweriana Bock pieces, and that's why this one was considered a harder piece to get. And you and I talked about Bock beer in the Midwest during the early times and why it wasn't so prevalent in the Midwest. And then we'll talk about a little bit on why it became prevalent on the West Coast as well.
Well, it follows the German migration west, no doubt. And a lot of German ancestry soldiers in World War II shipped out and went to the Pacific, shipped back, landed in California, and never went home. That's my theory. And so the thirst for Bock beer all of a sudden blossomed on the West Coast. Kind of like, in the Northeast, a lot of British immigration to the Northeast, and IPAs were a big deal up there. I think it's kind of the same deal.
Okay, so let me go back to sharing the screen here. All right. Now, there we go. So I put this one early for the simple fact that It's probably one of the more notable cans, it being a Bock ale, and obviously not in the best condition, but a lot of folks would have said, yeah, I don't think that's a real can. But then if you look at the coasters and all the other stuff that was available, the tray, the bag,
It's a real can.
it's the real deal. So yeah. So what's the deal behind it being a Bock ale?
Here again, I think it's just a marketing ploy to differentiate between Ortlieb and the other Bock brands around it. You know, that whole Philadelphia area was heavy with Bock beer from all the brewers in that area, and southeast Pennsylvania was a heavy Bock zone. A lot of Bock beer cans have been dumped in that area.
So why do you think it ran on such a limited basis, though?
Maybe it wasn't that good.
That's entirely possible.
I mean, there was never a second iteration of the Bock Ale can. All of the Bock Ale advertising really follows format-wise the layout of that can. You see the coasters in the beer bag. You know, they're dead on for the can. You know, I think it was a one run and done.
Okay. So yeah, so one of the other things that's pretty infamous with the Bock cans is the phantom lids that were featured on many of the cans. So I think at the time, this is what's called the Phantom Bock can by you guys, the Bockster folks. In 2003, there was as many as 46 of them known, but by 2010, there was easily 77 different versions or cans that featured the Phantom Bock list on there. And I wasn't quite sure, Jim, and I had asked, but I don't know if I had gotten a response. Was a composite list built on the Phantom Bock cans?
That's on the Merry Bockster BMV. You'll be able to pull that up, and it came in a couple of 3 magazines. We updated it a couple 3 times. And here again, this kind of covers the gap. A lot of 50s cans and early 60s cans from the Midwest area clear over to Colorado to kind of cover the gap that existed in the 30s and 40s. And I liken it to cone tops. The breweries that didn't want to spend a lot of money on artwork could slap a Bock beer lid on their cans and sell a different product. The cone top brewery brewers were cash strapped, didn't want to put a flat top canning line in, so they ran cone tops down their bottling line. I think it's the same sort of deal. So yeah, here and the Hensler is notable for having a goat on the lid. There's 3 or 4 that had goats on the lids. Golden Brow had one, Hensler had one.
Yeah, I think I had one other one, but I couldn't remember. I don't know if I kept that image of it or not. But yeah, there was at least 2 or 3 that I saw that had a noted goat on the actual Phantom Bock lid. So yeah. So is that the term? Is that the right term to use for these? Is Phantom Bock?
That's as good as any. And Jacob Parker has been keeping that composite alive. I think it's up into the mid 80s of cans now.
Okay. So now that we're talking about 12 different cans and stuff and getting into cans, we'll start off with the 12-ounce flat tops first. So yeah, so there was some discussion back. Obviously, this is from the Merry Bockster newsletter 2010, and when there was some thoughts into what was the first Bock can. And there's a lot of theories out there and a lot of ideas. So go ahead, Jim.
Well, this is the first 6. I don't think there's much doubt about that. The first 6 breweries to put Bock beer in cans. And to me, the winner first across the finish line was Pabst. And it's totally because of the word Canco. If you look at the other 5 and look at the opening instructions, the opener says Canco on it. On the first Pabst can, it doesn't, but on later Pabst cans, it does. And so I think March of 36 is when that can first came out, maybe late February, but I think March of 36. And the others followed within weeks, but Pabst, I really believe, was the first one.
So I'll try to help throw some of the theory behind that based off of what I could find from newspapers.com, and I think it'll help. What's interesting in the article that Jim did here is he said that he looked at a Ballantine Bock because he thought maybe the Ballantine Bock might have been the closest to it. And note, it says March 13th, 1936. Remember that date, March 13th, 1936, from the Ballantine folks. So this was the first Pabst Bock beer advertisement I could find with can mentioned in it. Although it says first and best in cans, it is from February 28th, 1936. There was no known Bock cans, obviously, in 1935. So 1936 in the spring would have been the first time Bock would have been in cans. So this was February 28th, and then there's another one from Iowa City for March 12th. Then there's the one out in Los Angeles for March 20th that talked about it being the first time now in Tappa cans. And then there's a nice one that has the actual can on it from April 10th. So that kind of throws the theory behind why the Pabst was likely the first one. So we have February 28th was likely the first date. So Jim had put a date on there based off of a can that he had for the Ballantine Bock, and he said it was March 13th, which would have been typically the opening day for those folks. So I was actually able to pull up an article that said that Ballantine actually held a Bock party on Saturday, March 14th. So that would have been, they canned it on the 13th and served it on the 14th. The first advertisement I could find actually had March 17th, and down at the bottom, you see down on the left, it says in bottles and in copper colored keg line cans. So that would have been March. So the date between Pabst of February 28th and Ballantine was at least 2 to 3 weeks. So that kind of supports the theory of what Jim was saying. And then I went back and I looked at the other cans that were included in that group that include the PON Bock, and that was March 16th. And then the Waldorf Golden Bock, but it doesn't say cans, was March 19th. So that kind of gives some support behind that. And then the last one would have been the Valley Forge Bock, and they actually said further on down that it was going to be available in cans, and that was March 28th. I was unable to find anything that confirms or showed any advertisement for the Kruger Bock, so I couldn't put anything behind it. So do you kind of stick with that then, Jim, as Pabst being the first one?
That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
All right. So obviously, like Jim was saying earlier, is that Philadelphia was the noted area of some of the cool Bock cans when they were coming out. So PON was obviously one of those noted, and everybody loves to go on the PON can. Their advertisements were pretty fantastic as well. And then obviously the Kruger, the Peter Dolger, the Jacob Rupert Bock. That's another well done goat.
You got to love the simple, big goat, in your face attitude of these cans.
Trommers, and then of course Waldorf as well. And then Eastside, I included Eastside on here for the simple fact that the Eastside has one of those big goats in your face. But what's interesting was I was able to go back and find in 1935, even though this can is a non-IRTP, Eastside actually used the same label, and then again the first time on cans later on. So the first time they used it on a bottle was 1935, but they didn't can it again, or actually they didn't can it as a Bock until much later on. So then Jim, so looking at all these different, Bock cans and stuff like that, what are one of the ones that you would have thought would have put it into a Bock can but actually did?
Well, go to your next slide.
Okay.
Poth. They're right in the middle of Philadelphia. Poth cans are notoriously hard to get your hands on. Everywhere they dumped Poth beer cans is either in the ocean or under a suburb of the 50s. So I hold out hope that there may be a Bock can surface sometime down the road.
You think it would just be an ugly brown Poth can with the word Bock on it?
You know, that's a really good question. It could be a green one. Who could say?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so I was able to show a couple of ads that Poth did put Bock out in bottles and on draft, but never put anything in cans.
Yeah, there's a lot of beers that I would have thought would have canned. You know, True Blue was turning out a different can every 6 weeks.
Yeah, and you and I talked about that, and these were the ones that were kind of cool things that were out there in advertisements and on labels that just never made it into a can. This Global Bock would have been a beautiful can. I would have loved to have seen this.
That would have been really sharp.
Yeah,
Red Top would have made a killer Bock can.
Yeah. So here's a couple other ones. Sterling, which was a pretty large distribution of Sterling. They just never made it into a Bock can. Rainier, of all people, out on the West Coast, had some great ads. Hams, again, and I'll show some labels a little bit later that shows you what the label looked like, the bottle label that would have made fantastic cans. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I was going to say, what about Beaverwick? What about Narragansett?
Yep, I've got
all right up there in the heart of Bock beer country, and they were putting a lot of cans out, but unfortunately, no Godius cans.
Yep, Iron City would have been a cool can.
Iron City would have been great. Red Top would have been great. Now Miller is interesting because I'm glad you showed it. There's a Bock coaster out there. What the hell is going on with that?
Yeah, I've got that image a little bit later on, Jim, so we can talk about that when we get
there. The other one that's the mystery is Gretz. There's paperwork floating around the hobby saying that there were boxcar loads of J Spouts and Crown Tainers for Bock beer, and they have never showed up. But you know, here again, that whole Philly area is just it's hard for 30s and 40s cans.
Yeah, and Narragansett again would have been a popular one. You would have thought they bottled it but never canned it.
Yeah, and they had a big distribution area. Grobner maybe, but they weren't really big on canning like True Blue was.
Yep. And then
Genesee.
Yep.
Genesee was everywhere, and Genesee was large. You know, they're coming out of Rochester, they're coming out of Bock beer territory, and they had gorgeous 30s and 40s labels, big goat-centric labels.
Yep.
So, yeah, what a shame.
Yeah. So here's some of the labels that I pulled up that would have made some beautiful cans. I would have loved to have seen the Black Eagle. Even the Hams, I thought would have been a cool can if it would have been the gold color. The Rainier, the Waylay would have been another one. I mean, you would have thought they would have put it on. The New Yorker, you know, of all cans, you would have thought that would have been one that they would have used.
Yeah, and Whaley, you know, the Whaley Genesee thing, surely they could have found a way to put a can out. I would have loved to have seen it.
So here's a couple more. There's the Miller. There's the True Blue. Now I had that True Blue that was a green version like that, and this is the brown version. But you can also see there's the White Seal version up there that had that as well. And it, you know, Coors of all people, they sold Bock in the early 30s, but again never canned it. That would have been a fantastic looking can.
It sure would. They put it in 30 stubby bottles, and they got a really killer bottle cap on those Coors bottles.
So the Lucky would have been kind of cool looking as a big X can with the goat at the top of it. Fort Pitt, man, Fort Pitt put out just about anything that they did, and they didn't put out a Bock can. So.
Oh yeah, Duquesne, same thing.
Yep.
Old German. I mean, Old German out of Cumberland, Maryland. Why in the world?
Yeah.
Just, you know, one of those things we just need to keep hunting.
Yeah, exactly. So now we'll talk about the hardest can, and tell us what you know about this can there, Jim.
Well, I don't know a lot. It's an enigma. This picture is out there, but the whereabouts of it are unknown to me. I referenced earlier that we had talked about a 6-pack of one-of-a-kind Bock beer cans, but because this one is unknown as to its whereabouts, I put this as the number 1. Plus, it's the oldest of the batch. The other singles would be the Honadel J Spout, which Mark Tracy's got, the Rheingold Bock Beer Flat, which I believe Mr. Fondren has on his shelf. There's a black letter Esslinger Party Quiz, which is sitting in New Jersey. And then there's one Budweiser Bock that has the lettering over top of the long neck bottle on the side panel in green instead of red.
Yep, and we'll get to that picture later as well too, Jim.
And Dale Rogowski owned that can for years and years, and then he parted ways with it a couple of years ago.
So I put some of the panels together that kind of shows a different box, and I didn't know if there was any ones in particular that you wanted to talk about. Like I said, the Budweiser Bock, I've got images of the 2 different ones, and I just didn't know if there was any ones up here in particular that you wanted to talk about, Jim.
Well, a couple of them are what I call goatless wonders. They're really hard to get in, especially in good condition, and I think they're really compelling just for that reason. But there's a column right there: the Arrow, the Dawson, and the F&S. All 3 killer cans, and hard to get in really good shape, especially the F&S. And Ballantine, until the late 50s, early 60s, didn't put goats on their cans at all. Richbrow, same thing. They were always a latecomer to everything, but they put out 4 Bock flats with no goats on them before they started putting goats out. And those Bock cans without goats have got a charm of their own, I think.
So Jim, did you have your young son draw the goat for the Gretz can? Is that how that happened?
Well, no. My young son wasn't young when that can came out.
Okay.
Neither was I.
Because that sure looks what like happened is they actually went over to maybe a 4th or grade school.
Oh well, go to the Pilsen Gold Bock.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get there. That's much further on. That's a hot topic item. We'll discuss that. So here's some more. Obviously, the Gunther's Dancing Goat's probably one of the more noted ones as well. So any ones in particular here you want to talk about, Jim?
Well, even though they're goatless wonders, the Senates are just really striking cans. Really beautiful color, deep saturated colors. The 1-year 75th anniversary brown Bock beer is just gorgeous and pretty elusive. I think there's 6 or 7 of them known to the hobby. The green Senate if you're ever hunting for a green Senate Bock and you find the non-IRTP version, grab it. There's only, I think, 4 of those now. The Old Bohemian, go back again. The Old Bohemian, the white one is fairly common, but the yellow one, there's 4 examples out there, 2 indoor and 2 dumpers. So, that to me, that was always, the hunt was always a lot of what made me enjoy Bock beer cans, but the hunt for some of these really obscure cans. And there's only 2 or 3 of the green Horning Bocks. The Gunther Dancing Goat comes IRTP and non-IRTP. The IRTP, I think, is much tougher. The Gold National Bohemian Bock comes from Miami. So, you know, look at those labels closely when you're looking at Bock beer cans. There could be a real diamond in the rough there. The old crown with Bock beer in the box, not just Bock in the box, is a really hard can. It's kind of a sleeper right there. So that was a good pick on your part.
Yeah, and then of course, as I was putting this together, I knew I missed a few cans, and those were the ones that Jim was talking about as the Goatless Wonders. Valley Brew's one of them, Golden Brow's one of them, and the Dubler's another one as well.
Well, yeah, the Dobler, you know, I can't believe as many Dobler dumpers as there are out there that there aren't more Dobler Bock dumpers.
Especially for that area, and well, people have been dumping up in that neighborhood for how long?
And the dumps are deep, long, and wide up there. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Now the Golden Brow comes in a beer with a Bock lid, as well as in a Bock beer. So that's interesting.
And so why Valley Forge and no Ram's Head? Or would that have just been too ironic to put a Ram's Head box?
Well, they'd be competing against themselves, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So, okay. So that was kind of a quick run through some of the 12-ounce cans. And then these are ones you obviously didn't see there. And this was an opportunity for Jim to talk about each one of these cans in particular.
Well, the Esslinger Bock beer with the waiter riding the goat is a fun can, period. But here again, there's one variation of it that's almost impossible. Jim Plant found one in the American Can Company employee find years ago. The Manhattan comes in two different instructional orientations, and I think there are two of each. So in 2-panel and 4-panel. And so there are 4 examples of Manhattan. The Schenling is actually the first, what I would say, really good beer can, Bock beer can that I ever got. I got this back in about 1978. And the Sunshine, that can, if you can get it with red in the Sunshine, you've got something.
Yep.
Most of those are, even the indoor ones, the shine is off of that red paint.
So we talked about the Budweiser Bock. If you have,
Yeah, here we go.
If you have one, you don't have actually both of them. So
Yeah, that's the one of a kind, and I've turned an awful lot of Budweiser Bock dumpers, and I've never seen one.
what do you think happened?
Well, I think it's just a one-run deal, and I've always felt like if they were going to be found, they could be found right around St. Louis,
Yeah.
because that green is a little darker, but you know, it's green, and it's the green of the goat.
Yep. So these are some of the other cans I didn't include in that run I had up front. And these are primarily the breweries that really were front leaning when it came to canning Bock cans. And that was obviously Pabst, Rheingold, Rupert. So, and that Rheingold IRTP, the one that's all the way up on the right-hand side, I told Jim I had it when I was at a show down in Virginia. He said, no, you don't. I said, yeah, I think I do. And then I went up and I found one in a $1 box that I didn't have, but I did find it in the $1 box at St. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Now the Jacob Rupert with the silver can with the big goat, the non-instructional of that can is incredibly hard. There's only 2 examples known, one indoor and one dumper. The wood grain next to it, there's only 2 indoor version examples. Nan Wick dumped about 7 or 8 or 9 of them once. And I think Andy Galamba and those guys dug 3 or 4 of them. And that's the only dumpers of that can that are known.
So the Rheingold Pale double Bock with the dancing goats, there's a harder version of that, correct?
There's a harder version. It looks just like that, but instead of it saying pale double Bock, it just says Bock beer.
Okay.
And that's a one-of-a-kind can.
Okay.
The can was found by a fella who worked at a prison and walked in the woods to let off steam and decompress. And he started finding dumps and picking up beer cans out of dumps. And he would only pick up beer cans that didn't have holes in them, that he could read the labels. And he traded that can or sold that can to Dave Launt years ago, who sold it to another fella who sold it to me, and now it's going on down the road. So,
and then of course,
one of a kind.
This is the continuation of the Knickerbocker as well as the Schaefer.
Yeah, now the Knickerbocker comes with and without pinstripes.
Yep.
And then the Schaefer small goat, I know of 3 versions of that. There's a large keg line box with IRTP. There's a small keg line box with IRTP and a small keg line box without IRTP.
Okay.
So here again, roll those cans over and look at the back sides. There's variations out there that a lot of folks don't realize.
Yeah. And when we did our practice run, you and I talked about your favorite can, and I'm stumped now, Jim. I can't remember what your favorite can was. Hang on, let me unshare here real quick. There it is, the Waldorf Golden Bock. So,
this is the Franken can. This was the can that Charlie Bacon found up off Tupper Lake on an island and traded it to the Lewandowskis. They grafted a Waldorf can to the back side of it where a section of it was missing. And the can weighs about 1/4 of a pound now. There's one other example of that can, and it's a mint can.
yeah.
And it's in Cincinnati.
So as far as my favorite can, mine's the Neuweiler Bock. Now if I can get this to flip, there we go. And the Neuweiler Bock, not only because of the graphics on the can, but I actually had an opportunity to dump some Neuweiler Bock cans up in the Poconos. So
did you dump this one?
That's mine sitting in the mason jar in the middle, and then the image on the right is the one once it was pulled out of the mason jar.
Did you dump this one?
I did.
Good for you.
So I did that with Mark Parambo up in the Poconos. So yeah, Neuweiler's by far my favorite Bock can, just because
it's a really striking design.
Yeah, the ones that were all found were found fairly in a close area. How the distributor must have been trying to sell them, and then maybe they just shared them amongst themselves or something because they were behind different houses and cabins and such. So, all right, so let's talk about this one, Jim.
Okay, well, this can was found in Kentucky in a trailer in a collection in the estate after he passed away. A fella bought the entire collection basically sight unseen to help out the sister of the fella who had passed away and to basically provide some money for burial expenses. And I should note that the fella, he's a well-known BCCA guy. I'm not going to say his name because I didn't talk to him about whether he'd want his name out about it. But he found money in several cans when he went through the cans from the estate and sent that money back to the sister. But this can was in that batch of cans in that trailer in Kentucky. And there was also paperwork in boxes around this can with other 30s cans from Fred Wolpe and Hal Noren. So this can probably came from one of them originally. And it is definitely a mock-up, paint-up And my son didn't do that goat either.
Okay.
So pretty interesting can. And there was a big controversy when the Lillick books came out as to whether it was real or not. I maintain it absolutely is not.
Okay.
If you would run your finger across it, you would realize that there's 2 or 3 layers of paint on there.
It was a nice attempt, though, right?
Well, it's an interesting attempt.
Yeah.
That goat's been into the Bock beer for a while, looks to me like.
Yeah. So you talked about this earlier. These were in the Bockster newsletters, and someone had said that they were in fact test runs. But how authentic do you think these attempts were to actually put them in use?
Well, I think the coasters are authentic, but evidently the Miller can is not, and the export Bock is not. I mean, so boy, I wish they were both real cans,
Yeah.
especially the Miller.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. Pabst obviously did a better job with theirs where they kept the goat on it. So, and then this is some nice concept art by Andy that was included in one of the editions of the Merry Bockster that he put together. There's a Genesee 12 goat Bock, a Town Club Bock beer with the little goat and the monocle, the Bay State Bock, and then a Williams Purple Goat Bock.
Yeah, Bay State and New England. Why didn't between those 2 brands? Why didn't they put out one Bock beer can?
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was pretty neat artwork to include from Andy. So let's talk about cone tops.
Okay, well, as I said earlier, just a couple 3 years ago, a second example of that National Bohemian Bock beer low profile came out, surfaced, and it's sitting in a collection very quietly. The other example is that one, which was in Adolf Granke's auction when he dispersed his collection. The Honadel Bock was found in a wall. The other known example of that was a fragmented can that the legend goes it fell off a shelf and disintegrated. The Gibbons Bock was a can that Will Anderson originally found, I think, or maybe it was Bob Myers, but I think it was Will Anderson. And it supposedly sat on the desk of the president of the brewery for years. And there's only 2 other examples of that Gibbons Bock. And
I think you got one there. Hey, hang on, let me.
boy, I'm really proud of it too.
There you go. That's one of the examples of the Gibbons Bock, and that.
Our grading system doesn't have a means of accounting for cans like this. But this can was found in the same location that the other dumper was found 10 years apart.
Yep. So let's see. Then, I gotta get this to move again. Come on. Oh, I went too far. We already talked about the Orderly Bock Ale, and then of course the Kubler Bock, and a bunch of those were found just a little while ago, correct?
That can's not as rare as folks think it is probably, but the graphics are so compelling. Who wouldn't want to have it on their wall?
Yeah, exactly. So
There's probably, I would say there's probably at least a case of those cans out there.
So those are the only 5 known cone tops, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now we'll go into crown tainers.
Yeah. Now you don't have the cams up there, and you don't have the Schlitz, and there's one more missing. What is it?
So is the Schlitz the real deal?
The Schlitz was a test can.
Okay.
It was a copper painted paper label wrapped test can. The cams is absolutely a legitimate can.
Yeah, and I didn't pull the image. It wasn't in the USB-C, or at least I couldn't find it. So
now the Mitchell or Michael, however you say that, there's only 2 examples of that known, and they're both in that kind of shape. The Esslinger Bock, there's about 7 or 8 of them out there. The Ortles 92, there's quite a few of them around. So there's been several finds of nice ones. The Old Topper, to my knowledge, that's the best one in existence. Most of them are a click or two below that, and there's a couple of really bad ones. There's maybe a 6-pack of those out there. The Schmitz and Edlings are the most common crown tainer box out there.
Okay.
And along with the Cam's paper label.
And then of course there's this infamous crown tainer.
That would be this infamous crown tainer.
Yeah, let me pull it up here real quick. Go ahead, Jim. Show it again.
Oh, geez, yes.
There you go. All right.
Yes, this was a scam of epic proportions perpetrated on the hobby by a fellow that I don't have a good thing to say about. He manufactured them. In fact, I will show you something that nobody's seen. This is a affidavit that I received from the local police department that was investigating the fraud, where they stamped this piece of paper with that Bock rubber stamp that you see the picture of that was used to create the Bock can.
How many of those did he actually have? The rubber stamp?
7.
No. He had 7 of them?
He made 7 of them. They got sold into the hobby for anywhere from about $350 to $600 a piece.
So obviously there was some thought they were legit after looking at the image on the right there where you see the black letters behind the actual.
It's insidiously clever because when you look at the way the letters themselves are a little pale on one side of the letters, and then you look at the letters in Ortel, they look very comparable. So he fooled a lot of people, including myself. Shame on me. So I carry this thing to shows. And so all of, my better Bock cans that I have in totes, I have prices on. And when they look at this one on the bottom, I put a sticker on it that says, "You looked." And then they say, "Well, what in the hell is that?" And then I tell them the story, because I want to make sure that nobody gets fooled again. That'd be a good song, wouldn't it, Dano?
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, so that obviously became pretty historical, and it was shared fairly wide. But obviously, even now, we continue to run into cans that are being done that people make cans to look like authentic cans.
Well, one of the most insidious parts of this is there are case boxes out there with that crooked Bock on the case that are legitimate case boxes. And if you look at the bottle caps, that Bock is crooked like that on bottle caps. So if he'd put his creative talents to an honest job, I bet he could make a good living.
There you go. Yeah. So that's pretty much it as far as crown tainers. And then there's the quarts.
Okay, well, you've got the Esslinger Bock quart, which again, there's probably 6 to 10 of those in the hobby. The Bock flat top quart is a real can. The Esslinger Bock flat top quart is a real can.
Yeah, and I just couldn't find a good image of it to confirm. But
there's 2, maybe 3 examples of that out there.
The difference being with the flat is it says contents 32 ounces at the bottom.
Yes. And they showed up in a show in the late 70s. I think it was outside of Philadelphia. A kid carried them in a grocery bag. Where they came from and who that kid was, who knows. Now the Schmitz Bock again comes in 1 quart and 32 ounce versions on the bottom. So there's 2 versions of that.
And then you want to talk about this Natty Bow?
Well, what do you want me to say about it other than it's bogus?
Yeah. And obviously, you either had your son paint it again or took it over to some grade school to get it taken.
Well, actually, Dave Lott painted that.
Oh, okay. Oh, he's not the best artist. We'll at least.
No, but you got to give him an A for creativity.
Yeah.
I got that can from him at the New Jersey Convention in 1990. And I had it sitting on my television set in my room just because, you know, it made people stop and talk. And we had a pair of guys that I don't know, never did know who they were, came walking in, and the one guy's acting like he's a know-it-all. And they're looking around, and he goes and looks at that National Bohemian, and he goes, huh, well, you don't see those very often. And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, you don't. So that is a one of a kind.
Yep.
And I believe Doug Groth still has that can.
So here's just a little image of the Esslinger Bock. Nice, cool little advertisement. And I didn't
back up to that a minute.
Okay.
Buckeye had a similar rig set up with Bucky, who was their spokesman. You know, he was a short fella, and he had a goat called Bucky, who drove him around town, and they gave away Buckeye Bock beer.
Yep. So I didn't include many tabs because we'd be here all night talking about different tab cans, but this was one at least I wanted to put up there, and you could tell the story behind it. Here, let me stop sharing there. There you go, Jim. All right.
It's a wrap, and on the back of it, it says, this reproduction compliments of Film Fest 2, designed courtesy National Brewing Marketing Department of the National Brewing Company of Baltimore, Maryland. This was given out at a James Bond Film Festival in about 1980 in Florida. There was also a regular James Bond wrap the year before given out, but I've never seen one of them.
Oh, okay. So then this is obviously the biggest Bock can, obviously the only gallon version of a Bock can.
That's the only gallon version. No Bock lidded gallons.
Yep.
And there's probably, I don't know, 4 to 6 of these out there.
So the one thing we didn't talk about was 16 ounces.
Well, I only know of one 16 ouncer, and that's a Canadian Ace that's got a Bock lid.
So it's one of those phantom Bock cans.
So it's a Phantom. That's the only one I've ever seen, and I've seen 3 of them.
Yeah. So, and then as far as Breweriana goes, there's not much out there. There's a couple of trays. You got 2 of them over the top of your head. And then there's this tip tray. And you said that the tip tray was kind of a stock art that you think was used for two different types of breweries, correct?
Correct. And now obviously that's pre-pro.
Yeah. So I didn't include a whole lot of Breweriana pieces. We could have talked about those all day. Now, these fingers look familiar. I think you'll identify those to be your very own fingers there, Jim. So I think you and I had discussed, and you said that these were fake.
Those are all fake. The Old Manhattan and the Peter Hands was done by a fellow that's well known in our hobby, whose name I won't mention because he never tried to purport that they were anything other than just mock-ups.
Yeah.
The Arrow beer was purported to be real, but obviously is not. It's a paper cutout of a label.
Yeah, and I know you are pretty noted yourself for collecting little bottles, and I think you've made mention possibly wanting to talk about little bottles sometime if we get a chance.
Yeah, I'd love to do another webinar on mini bottles.
Okay. So then I didn't include a whole lot of craft cans. We could talk about craft cans, but one of the things you and I talked about when it came to specific craft cans and Bock beer today, first off, how do you think the market's doing as far as Bock in cans as craft beer right now?
It's really interesting to me that it's about a 60-40 split between 12 ounce and 16 ounce Bock cans. There's an awful lot of 16 ounce Bock cans coming out. I've got about 45 or 50 12 ounce Bock micro cans. I've got another 25 or 30 16s, and it seems like as the further we go on, the more that moves to about 50-50 between 16s and 12s.
Yeah.
So it may be a canning cost versus the volume versus what they can sell them and the margins they get, that it's more attractive to sell beer in 16s than in 12s.
Okay. So this should look familiar. You want to talk about this, Jim?
Well, that was my Bock beer can collection at the height of its infamy. Across the top, you see the cones and crowns, including one of the Mitchell crown tainers. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows of Bock flats. Then another three rows of Bock pull tabs, and then 2 rows on the bottom of Bock lidded cans. So I had a few, and then a bunch of Bock ball knobs. I like the Bock ball knobs up in the top left corner.
Yep.
And I still have those over here on the wall. I got to the point of no return with Bock cans, and I've dispersed most of the collection.
Yep. So this was from 2008. This is a BCCA display that you and Brian Williams put together.
This was my collection, and I took it to the Orlando Canvention and set it up. And boy, Jim Mitchell, I'm telling you what, that man ran a tight ship. We were about 15 seconds before we ran out of time to assemble this thing, and he was going to throw us out of the hall. So we got it done. Couldn't have got it assembled without Brian's help. And then we won best of show that year. We won the Chuck Hillier Award that year. I was pretty proud of that. And Herkimer's front and center right there.
So Jim, anything else in particular you like to talk about that we didn't cover Bock beer wise?
Just that, you know, in addition to beer cans, labels are a great side hobby. Bock beer labels are wonderful, beautiful things. I really like the bottle caps. I've got a pretty nice Bock bottle cap collection. The ball knobs are almost exclusively foil stick-ons that they would put over the regular Bock ball or regular beer ball knob. And then of course signs. There's a lot of wonderful art out there. So, you know, any way you want to go, yeah, the Dr. Seuss Narragansett pieces are just tremendous. So any way you want to go with Bock stuff, you can't go wrong.
Yep. So I'm going to stop sharing because that's the end of the slides that I put together there, Jim. It went a little longer than I was kind of thinking it might, but I think it was a lot of good information. So what we'll do now is we'll unmute everybody. The only other piece I want to talk about is what you and I talked about, Jim, is that Horlick piece behind you, because a lot of people see that in collections. And I had to put a note out to you on the whole deal behind the Horlick and what people need to look at and realize when they see it, because there's a typo on there.
Yeah, the Horlocker piece has got a error in the mandatory. Horlocker's misspelled, which I didn't realize until Keith pointed it out to me.
Yeah.
But the story I've always heard is Glenn Reisner, who's a former president of the Rusty Bunch, was at a show at the Horlocker Brewing Company and set his table up against the wall, and there was a hole in the wall under his table. He was about 12 or 13 years old, so he crawled through the hole. He crawled into another room, and there were these die-cut cardboard Bock pieces stacked against the wall, probably because the mandatory was wrong. They weren't out for distribution. So he brought a bunch of them out from under there and started putting them on his table one at a time, trading them off and getting stuff for him at the show till somebody figured out what was going on, and then everybody, I guess, walked out with one.
So yeah, now everybody can kind of unmute themselves if they like to.
Hey, real quick, Mike Maitland, he wants to know what are the top 6 toughest Bock cans. That was in chat.
Okay, well, I would say number 1 is the Line Bock beer. Number 2 would be the Honadel J Spout, the Honadel Bock J Spout. Number 3, I think, would be that Rheingold Bock beer that is only got a one-off dumper example. The Black Letter Essinger Party Quiz can is a one-of-a-kind. The Green Letter Budweiser Bock is a one-of-a-kind. And then I think I'd say it's a dead heat, but there are 2 pretty nice National Bohemian low pro Bock beer cans, but there's only one nice Waldorf and then the Franken can. So probably I'll put the Waldorf as number 6 in that 6-pack.
So yeah, if you got questions now for Jim, you can unmute yourself.
Don wants to show off his mini bottles.
Uh-oh.
Did you recognize those, Don?
Yeah.
Can you see him?
Himself. There you go. Mr. Meisterbrau's got 2 himself as well. So
Yeah, there they are.
yeah. So now's the opportunity for anybody that wants to show off any of their Bock stuff. If they got any questions in particular, like I said, the intent was for Jim to kind of give us the law of the land as far as Bock stuff goes. If you see him at a show, tap on his shoulder and ask him some questions. He's well versed in the Bock.
Jim, if you can find the other piece of this for me for this PON, I would appreciate it.
Who am I?
I couldn't pass it by at a show.
Nice.
It's the Fig and Span PON.
Well, yeah, it sure is.
Unfortunately, it's missing the best part of the actual goat. So
I know. I got it from Dave Reed. I said I can't pass this thing out.
yeah. So
Well, at least you got the eyeballs of the goat, so you can look him in the eye.
Yeah. Now I collect the East Coast cans, and there's so many beer and ales that I got that.
yeah. So again, appreciate everybody checking in. We can stay up here as long as you want. If you got questions about the BCCA, I'm here to answer any BCCA related questions. What's that, Dan?
What you got there, Dano?
Oh, KC with the
Oh,
Bock.
KC's, yes, sir.
Yep. So
Which brewery's that from?
Oh, yeah. Give me a second. Oh, man, eyes. I got a Atlantic, Chicago.
Okay.
there you go.
It's probably the easy one.
Hey, Jim, the A&P Tudor, my OCD, that's the last one I have to get. And every time I see it, it gets snapped up. Is that a real tough one, the flat?
It is, and the pull from Cumberland is not easy either because it's a glued seam and it wants to separate, so it's hard to get one in nice shape.
Hang on a second.
You're talking about the white A&P, right?
The white, and it's it's got A&P at the top and a brown label.
Yeah, that can's not easy to find. The older butterscotch colored ones are easier to find.
I can't imagine people in the 60s racing to a supermarket to buy a Bock brand.
Well, here again, that A&P came out of Cumberland in a pull tab, so why in the world didn't they put out an old German or an old export box?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We'll never know.
That's it. Checking out Joe's collection.
What you got, Jack?
You're on mute. Hang on. Ask to unmute. Got to unmute, Jack. There you go.
You can
All
hit
right.
space.
This came to my mind while the presentation was going on. I was wondering when or where did the rumor come from that Bock beer was a result of the cleaning of the equipment at the brewery every spring?
You know,
Yeah, that
that's
was-
been around, that's been around as long as Bock beer's been around. In
Yeah,
fact, I think one of the ads that Keith had in his presentation referenced that it wasn't true.
okay.
And
I know
we
it wasn't.
true.
I knew it wasn't, but it always, you know, you
I think-
come across the know-it-all people that have no idea what brewing really is about. Oh yeah, Bock beer. That's from when they clean the equipment at the brewery, right? No, wrong. But you never can convince them
Yeah,
because
if-
you know it all.
If only our hospitals were as clean as a typical brewery, there'd be a lot less COVID in this world.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Hey, we can talk about anything anybody wants to talk about.
Well, I got some questions on some cans.
Uh-oh, Vance has got a question.
Yeah, a lot of questions. I picked up some pop cans today. I was just wondering if they're worth anything. There's some juice tabs, so I know those are at least good.
Can't see them.
Here. My camera turned off. No,
Oh, no,
I'm
you-
on.
Yeah, let me look in the book there, Vance. I don't think the squirt's worth much of anything, but let me look.
Yeah, there's two of those. Those are juice tabs. But I know Coke multi-diamond cans at least good.
Yeah, those are good ones.
Yeah, and there's
You're clean.
yeah, I know that's I was shocked too. This the lady was cleaning out her crawl space.
Tell her to keep
that's-
looking.
Yeah.
Well, it was her son who was trying to collect cans back like in, I don't know, like in the 70s or something. And for some reason he had these, and these are all the cans he had. But she said she wanted to get rid of them. She didn't want them in there anymore.
Yeah, the squirt's only a $7 or $9 can.
Okay.
Yep, so that's not worth much of anything.
But what about the Coke multi-diamond?
Oh,
Is this a juice tab? I don't know.
Yeah, you're gonna ask me to look for something that's got a bazillion different variations to it.
Really?
Yeah, Cokes.
Probably.
Should post those questions up in the soda pop forum on Rusty Bunch.
On Rusty Bunch.
Those guys will know everything.
Yeah, Will.
Yeah, I'm not in the Rusty Bunch. But
No,
I
it's in
just
the forum. You don't got to be a
Oh.
Rusty Bunch member. We're cool.
okay. Well, these are Pepsis. I don't know if these are worth anything or no.
Those are some of the harder versions.
I don't know what this top is called though. I've never seen that top before other than on a beer can.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's like yeah, like the normal 70s or late 60s, early 70s.
yeah. You
No,
don't.
this one says aluminum. This one doesn't.
Yeah, Vance, you just have to register with a user's name, whatever you want to make it to be, Vance S or whatever, up on the Rusty Bunch, and you can post. You don't have to physically be a member, and they'll.
You don't got to be.
There's a soda portion questionnaire, and you can ask the question there. So.
Yeah, they'll know.
Okay.
Those guys know everything about pop cans, soda cans.
So, Kip,
No, that was the first thing I actually started collecting were soda cans because I have all these and I got to flip my camera.
Just do what I do every year for the Rusty Bunch, and that's join online for 3 years. I think I'm paid up for the next 9 years or something.
You're like Larizolo.
Yeah,
Signs up every year for 3 years.
yeah,
the way to
he
do it.
really does it in person now. He won't do it online.
So, Kip, you were holding something up. What was that, Kip?
Yeah, this is a label that you can add to. It'd be great if it was a can.
Oh, that would look great.
It's from Peoria.
Yeah, where the goat's breaking out of the label.
Oops.
Oh, I like that.
Just,
Nice.
That's one that, yeah, if that was a can, I mean,
Is
that'd
that a
be
U
awesome.
permit label?
No, it's not. Nope,
So-
RTP only.
Okay.
I have a question for anybody.
has there been any Bock can or box
Jim?
aluminum can? What do you call it? Aluminum bottle. They had any Bock aluminum bottles about?
Yeah, somebody's got echo.
Tim, I've never seen a cabottle in Bock.
Okay, I was just
That doesn't
curious.
mean it's not out there,
Yeah.
because
And the other question I had. Oh, go ahead.
especially in the micros, you know, these cans come and go in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
To me, that's part of the challenge of hunting these micro Bocks. If you don't get them the 2 weeks they're out, you're not going to get them.
Yeah, yeah. The other question I just had was, with the older European, do they have Bock cans from like Europe that are that have a goat on it?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen anything like that?
Yes,
Wire
indeed.
cutters and a drill with a screw if you have it.
Yes,
Hello,
there
Jim.
are multiple foreign cans with goats in flats and in tabs.
Okay, thank you.
So what's the deal behind the German ones where they're double box? I mean, is it a real true double box, Jim?
Well, I liken it to like the Belgians, the doubles and the triples. It's a click up on alcohol and a click up on the body of the brew, you know,
Okay.
the specific gravity of the brew.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Keith,